We will be starting a short unit on naturalism. We'll be reading two texts, a book called Into the Wild, and we previously read an article that was the precursor to this novel, and we'll be reading a short story called To Build a Fire. So we'll be talking about two movements in literature, one called naturalism and one called transcendentalism. So it was part of the Romantic movement, which started in the early 1800s with a poet called William Wordsworth. And Romanticism kind of focused on the individual freedom of social conventions and political restraints, human imagination. There was a major focus on nature and the individual over society. So Romanticism didn't necessarily mean love or romantic ideals. It was kind of a movement of being an individual, not really being constrained by the restraints of society, and a big focus on nature as your impetus for kind of creation and on being imaginative. Transcendentalism also started during that same time period. It was really a very American movement. It was political and it was philosophical in nature. And the idea was that people had the knowledge within themselves to transcend or go beyond what we find in the world. Okay, so again, it focused on that power of the individual, and it said that society corrupts. They really focused on the human conscience, and the individual determines what is right and wrong. So people should look inside themselves, go into nature, go into art, and look through work for answers to life's most perplexing problems. So basically, leave society behind, leave your groups behind, go into nature, look at art, look at literature, and find your answers within yourself. Nature, they believed, was essential to human education and could provide almost a religious or spiritual experience. Some of the famous, influential transcendentalists were Ralph Waldo Emerson, Walt Whitman, I'm sorry, I can't talk today, and Henry David Thoreau, and they were in the Transcendental Club. Henry David Thoreau wrote a book called Walden. He went to a place called Walden Pond and tried to live self-sufficiently without any other people or any other resources and without interference of society. He wrote about simplicity and unity of all things in nature and how nature can show that all good things are wild and free. Let's talk about naturalism in literature. So it was a literary movement of the 1800s through the 1930s. So it started in the late 1880s through the 1930s, and it was based on Darwin's theory of evolution. So this is, again, science and nature kind of coming together again. And it was detailed realism. It suggests that social conditions, heredity, and environment determine our character and our outcomes. So here are some characteristics of naturalism. Pessimism, detachment from the story. The author often tries to maintain a tone that will be experienced as objective. And determinism. Basically, our fate is predetermined. There is nothing we can do about our fate or our outcome. And often a naturalist author will lead the reader to believe that a character's fate has been predetermined, usually by environmental factors, and he or she can do nothing about it. So nature is determining the character's fate or outcome. There's usually a surprising twist at the end of the story, and some of the themes tend to be survival, determinism, violence, and nature as an indifferent force acting upon the lives of human beings. Characters often have a brute within, like a strong, warring emotion that helps them overcome these obstacles. Some of the authors that are famous for naturalism are Jack London, John Steinbeck, Stephen Crane, Edith Wharton, and Theodore Dreiser. Some of you may have read Jack London were you a little bit younger, and I know you all read John Steinbeck last year with Of Mice and Men. Here's an example from a movie called 127 Hours. I want you to watch this video clip as a good example of naturalism. Okay, so 127 Hours is actually the true story of a man who gets trapped in a canyon with has to saw off his own arm to escape after being trapped for 127 hours. It is a true story. It really happened, but it really encompasses those themes of naturalism. So be looking for these themes and characteristics of transcendentalism and naturalism as we read Into the Wild, which is a true story, and To Build a Fire, which is a fictional short story. I hope you enjoy.